we good yet? Let me know.
We're good.
All right. Okay, looks like we are now live. Welcome to the Scarborough Town Ordinance Committee meeting of Thursday, May 20th. We are live on both Zoom and on our YouTube. So call to order. Is Tracy there?
She's not in yet. She's
okay. That's okay. That's right. I'll do roll call. Ken, are you here?
Oh, yes, I am. Yeah.
See, I had to ask. Dawn, are you present? Dawn?
I
Dawn?
think he's frozen.
I think that we lost him. I think he's frozen too. Well, Counselor Caterina is here. We can see Counselor Hamel, but we can't hear him or see him. So I'm not sure what's going on.
I'm a little concerned about him.
Tom, you're on mute.
I just left him. I assure you he's fine.
Okay.
He's right upstairs.
Yeah, but he's got no connection.
Hmm.
Something's happened to his connection.
I'll go up and see.
Thank you. All right. In the meantime, I think he can probably hear. Oops, can he hear us? Maybe he logged off and is going to log it back in again. Because I don't want him to miss any public comment. That's why I haven't. We could do approval of the minutes with just the two of us.
We could do that.
So you want to move that, Ken, and I'll second it.
So moved.
And that's a second. And Ken, I'm going to ask you for a yes or no on that.
Yes. Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that's two.
And I'm a yes too. I'm back
Oh,
again.
yay, he's back.
IT guy's office and there's no internet here, so try that on for size. So.
Oh, whatever. Okay, well, I'm glad you're back. So we do have Counselor Hamel.
Okay, thanks.
All right, let's start. We have 15 minutes for public comment. I ask that people stay very concise with that. As I remind folks, you know, the work of the Ordinance Committee isn't to make any final decisions on anything. It's to pretty much decide if we're going to move something out to council. So there'll be plenty of time for input for anything that goes out to council from this committee. But that being said, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask, is there, if you wish to speak on the marijuana establishment licensing ordinance, if you could raise your hand, we'll start with that. Looks like we have Shelley.
Yep.
William.
Shelley, if you unmute yourself, you should be able to speak.
So, hi, can you hear
Hey,
me?
Shelley. Yes, yep.
Hi, my name is Shelley Pelletier. I'm one of the owners of the 10 Snow Canyon Road facility. And I would like to, first I would like to thank Liam and the Ordinance Committee for working with the residences and the businesses surrounding the 10 Snow Canyon Road location. I was very happy with the way the April meeting went and what came out of that. After the meeting in April, we as property owners started having the conversations with the cannabis cultivators that are in this building. And we will continue to advise and inspect the spaces to ensure their compliance with the proposed odor mitigation plan. It's a plan that, moving forward, is a plan that's easy to work with. Now that we know that you're going to ask for the 10 air exchanges per hour, it gives us something to go back on and to talk to some of the manufacturers of this charcoal filter systems and to see what we feel would be best suited to work in these spaces. That's it.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Shelley. Anyone else wish to speak on the marijuana portion? Going, gone. Okay. The next one is Black Point Road parking. If anyone wishes to speak on that, please raise your hand. That's the Black Road, I can't even talk. Black Point Road parking. Thank you. Looks like we have Mr. Gates.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. Mr. Gates, I'm going to allow you to talk. Just give me one moment. If you unmute yourself, Mr. Gates, you should be able to speak.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Yep.
Hi, thank you for addressing the issue. Thanks for the good work. I've had a chance to review this section of the agenda. I sent an email earlier today. I didn't see the agenda until I think day before yesterday and didn't have a chance to get to it before today. Living here, I'm Marvin Gates, 423 Black Point Road. Living here, I'm very intimate with the section that's being described. And I have to say that I think with the growth in Scarborough going forward, you will be revisiting this issue and perhaps looking for the Scarborough Beach State Park to open their parking lot in the winter in exchange for, as I understand it, in exchange for no parking on both sides of the road, because I think the traffic will warrant it. However, I understand we all take a bite of the apple one at a time. And I think this is a very good bite. And in my email, I did point out that that corner between on the map on page, I think it's 33, that corner that you have left in green going around Black Point Road, it's sort of in the center of the map between the little section in front of the state park, no parking area, and then Ferry Road. I think a comparably sized, I suggest strongly that a comparably sized no parking area on that corner, comparable in size to the area at the entrance to the Scarborough Beach State Park, would be smart from a safety standpoint in the winter. And I hope you will revisit, I suggest you revisit that possibility before sending this to council. And I otherwise thank you very much for your time and for your good work.
Thank you. Anyone else who wants to speak on the Black Point Road parking? Okay, it's gone. And then last but not least, does anyone in the public wish to speak on the utility scale solar ordinance?
Miss Bristol, I'm going to allow you to talk. If you unmute yourself, you should be all set.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Thank you. Thank you very much to everyone for your time. I know it's been a marathon week. I've been watching all the meetings, so I appreciate your time on this. I wanted to comment on the proposed utility scale solar development ordinance. And first, I'd like to say I'm in favor of solar farms, particularly as a means to an end for existing working farms. Just anecdotally, generations of my family owned and operated a Hood dairy farm in the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont for 150 years. So I certainly can appreciate what income derived from solar harvesting might mean to the sustainability of a family farm. But my concern with the ordinance as it's drafted is the authorization to install a utility scale system everywhere in the RF district. And although there's no odor involved, along the same lines as the discussion around the marijuana ordinance, there remain areas of the RF district that are in practicality rural residential areas, such as the Route 77 Spurwink Road corridor, where a utility scale industrial solar farm would be incongruous with the surrounding residential area. I took a look at how other towns and communities are citing these farms, and found like Cape Elizabeth, South Portland, and others have or will be locating them in former landfills, Sanford near the airport, others in gravel pits and blueberry barrens, and in much more remote rural areas.
So one approach might be to restore the rural residential zoning in applicable areas of the RF district, so you don't bump into this every time that there's something new that wants to be explored. And beyond that, rather than banking on the assumption that it would be cost prohibitive for a solar farm development to look into prime acreage, what I would respectfully ask the Ordinance Planning and Sustainability Committees to consider would be creating an RF district overlay that would limit the utility scale farms to the more remote rural areas of Scarborough. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Allison.
Jean Marie, you want Rick next?
Yeah, let's do Rick next, and then we'll do Nick. Rick and Nick.
Rick, yep, all set.
Good afternoon, Rick Monking, 23 Hearn Road. I'm speaking after the Sustainability Committee. We appreciate the work that you folks have done in reviewing this draft language and helping both the Long Range Planning Committee and the Sustainability Committee coming up with what I think is some very significant steps toward allowing these utility scale solar farms to be brought into Scarborough. Lots of benefits. I'm not going to go over the benefits of solar. I think in the districts that we recommended, the Sustainability Committee recommended, in some cases where they may abut residential areas, the electric infrastructure may not be there, and it may be cost prohibitive for these solar farm developers to do anything. But certainly, Scarborough's got a vast landmass that would certainly serve a solar farm, a great venue for providing some clean energy to the grid. I think Jamie will get more in depth as you discuss this, but again, I just wanted to say this isn't something that happened overnight. The drafting of this and the language involved had a lot of collaboration, and I think it's before you today, pretty much in a form that will certainly benefit those that wish to use their land for this purpose, and maybe encourage the developers of these utility grade solar farms to come to Scarborough and bring the technology with them. With that, I'll close my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. And let's go with Nick Mazurowski.
Thanks very much. Can you hear me?
Ken.
Solway, Nick.
Solway, great to see
How are
you.
you?
I'm doing well, thank you. I'm pulled over on the side of the road, so yes, I apologize for any background noise.
If people are wondering why I'm speaking this way to Nick, Nick's a former Latin student of mine. So there you go. Small world. Go ahead, Nick. Sorry.
Yes. Yeah, no problem. And thank you very much. We really appreciate the work that the town has done. So I'm speaking as both a Scarborough resident as well as a developer of solar projects. I'm co-founder of the company Dirigo Solar, and we're developing a 5 megawatt solar facility on the Larson landfill in Scarborough, which is out by the Eco Main facility and abuts the Eco Main landfill. And as the previous speaker stated, landfills are a great reuse and development opportunity for solar. And we secured the site control about 5 years ago. It was one of the first projects that we began working on, and it was before kind of all the buzz with solar. And it's been quite some time in development. The grid process with CMP can take some time. We were successful with that last year. We're now working with the state, the DEP, for a post-closure amendment, and should have that finalized in about 60 days. And now that the final step for having this project be shovel ready is the town passing the ordinance, which we fully support. We've shared comments throughout the process, which I know has been going on for several months. I think more than 12 months, and we really think that the town's done a great job and are fully supportive of it. So we appreciate the work you've done and respectfully ask that the town move forward and pass it.
All right. That it, Nick?
That's it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on the solar? All right. Going, gone. All right. So that will end public comment. What I would like to do, if I could, I'm going to ask my fellow members, do you mind if we move Black Point Road and do that first and then go into the marijuana and the solar? Because Black Point is probably a bit quicker. And I know the marijuana and the solar is a bit more in depth. Do you guys have any issue with that?
No.
Okay. So I'm going to take the purview of the council as council chair. We are now going to talk about item 6, which is the discussion of prohibiting parking on Black Point Road and Ferry Road year round. Mr. Hall, do you mind speaking to that?
Yes, we did receive input, obviously, from the Prouts Neck Improvement Association that spurred this conversation in the first instance. Following receipt of that and some preliminary discussion among the Ordinance Committee at your last meeting, I did work with folks at the police department, Deputy Chief O'Malley in particular, and first order of business was for us to familiarize ourselves with the current restrictions on parking on that lower section of Black Point Road. And so we did that, and as you probably won't be surprised to hear, there were a fair amount of restrictions that existed already, starting all the way up at Old Neck Road. So really working from that, and I guess the other design construct here was needing to work with very definable endpoints, if you will, for clarity, for signage and enforcement. We really tried to stay with some of the existing limits in the ordinance, as well as known landmarks, intersecting streets and such. So what you see before you is a proposal to essentially ban parking, I'll say on the Western Beach or Ferry Beach side of Black Point Road, all the way from Old Neck Road to the end, down to Checkley Point at the end of Prouts Neck. I believe it's all the way to Checkley Point or close enough. And that would allow for parking to continue on the opposite side, I'll say the Scarborough Beach side. That's the area shown in green, from Kirkwood, which was the existing limit of that prohibition, down to Ferry Road. And again, we've chosen for clarity and transparency to use intersecting roads as the endpoints of the restriction. There was a previous restriction, I believe it's 50 feet in either direction of the existing entrances to the Scarborough Beach facility, and that's that little red piece, if you will, on either side of the green. So that's the proposal. I think you heard some comment and public comment about further changes beyond that. I think there's a member, I think Deputy Chief.
Tom, you just muted yourself. Do you want to pull Dave in?
Yeah, I said, I think Deputy Chief Grover's here. I'm not aware that he's necessarily has anything further to contribute, but I want to acknowledge his presence.
Okay. Chief Grover, do you have anything to add to this?
Dave, if you want to raise your hand, if you have anything you'd like, I can bring you in.
I guess not.
Okay, that's fine. All right. I would start with discussion. I would ask Mr. Hamill, Mr. Johnson, if you have any input on this.
I just want to thank Tom for the due diligence and appreciate it and respect the preliminaries that were put on this, and I accept what's being presented in front of us.
And
John?
I would support that, the comments made by Councilor Johnson, and and add my thanks to Tom for doing the work here and having what would basically be a compromise offer following from the last meeting.
Yeah, and I will add that I talked to Mr. Hall and asked him, to come up with something. There's no way in heck I was going to ban parking on both sides of the street. And I know I've been real clear with everyone about that. That's my opinion. So, I was happy to see him come up with this. My suggestion is that we move this forward to the council as is, with the recognition that it's probably not going to get in front of council probably until September, given council scheduling and whatever. And there's a 3-step process there, but at least, it's a way to begin looking at this. I think it'll also be interesting to see, and hopefully we're going to be past COVID, maybe, in the fall and winter. So it'd be interesting to see, how much use Scarborough Beach will get, because this to me was a very unusual year too. There were a lot of people who stayed here year round who aren't normally here year round and whatnot. So with that being said, what's your pleasure, sirs?
The only thing I was going to offer is I know that Marvin Gates suggested some additional revisions to this plan. So is that something we would expect to take up with the council, or is that something that, okay.
I would expect the council, because I don't know what the council's going to think of this. Only the 3 of us have seen it. So there's 4 other people. So I would say, we can look at it more in depth when it comes before the council. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and if I could just offer, I think that's a good approach. I'll give some further thought to Mr. Gates's suggestion. If I understood him correctly, I think it does present some drafting and some kind of enforcement issues. Again, if I understood him correctly, it was a fairly small segment immediately in the area of the inside of that curve. And how we define that area on the face of the earth is not impossible, but a bit challenging. But let's get the full council input, and that's an ad that we can make fairly simply.
Yeah, you might need a GPS coordinate or something, right, on those, so.
Okay, can I have a motion to move this to council?
So moved.
I second.
All right, with that being said, how do you vote, Mr. Hamel?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
And Ms. Katerina is a yes. So this will be forwarded to council probably in September. Thank you. All right, next, let's do marijuana.
Okay.
Mr. Gallagher, that's your expertise.
Yeah. So I won't go back and reread the memorandum. Everyone saw it, but just to kind of distill or try to frame the conversation for this evening. Really, we're proposing some, or I guess the committee, I think, is for their consideration, going to consider some changes to the ordinance. Primarily, Section 10 is where Section 10, subpart 7 is where we've proposed to, I'm just looking for it now, proposed to make some changes in odor mitigation specifically. If you recall, that is the overarching concern from constituents that we've heard over the last year and a half or so since this ordinance has been adopted. These recommendations and proposed changes come right out of our odor mitigation consultants report on the Snow Canning Road facility. And they include, although fairly straightforward, I think they include some important changes to odor mitigation equipment specifications, expectations for filtration, and air exchange rates. There it is. So that's the first and most tangible recommendation. The other piece here is, and again, it's not highlighted in red, but you'll notice that the proposed change puts the responsibility on both the marijuana establishment as well as the property owner. This may be one and the same, but as we've frequently talked about, one of the challenges with the Snow Canning Road facility is that there's a single property owner and upwards of 15 license holders. And so trying to determine where the source of the odor originates is extremely difficult, if not, and frankly, it's impossible. So making sure the property owner bears some responsibility for making sure the odor requirements around no odor beyond the property line, we thought that was an important change for the committee to consider. So again, I don't think that this is certainly not the first time these recommendations have been heard. It is the first time, though, that they're being proposed to be incorporated in the ordinance. So if that's a appropriate segue for the first recommendation, and then I think there are a few other, per my memorandum, some discussions that I think we should have that may yield further changes.
All right, thank you. So let's start with this. Any discussion on the odor mitigation standards here?
Yeah, I think they follow pretty closely what we had discussed when Bob Bowman was doing his review. I like them because they're brief and they're clear. The only thing I'd say is I think we may have a typo there. I think it's efficacy.
Efficacy.
Yeah,
right.
Fair enough.
Not efficacy. So, and the only other question I had was the change of the wording from required to responsible. So, I mean, I think that's probably a good change, and that's probably more enforceable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And I thought that Ms. Pelletier's comments seemed to be in support of this as well at the outset of the meeting today.
Okay. Ken, do you have anything to add?
No, I agree. Good work. I think it encompasses directly what our third-party consultant suggested. So good work, Liam. I think it fits well. And again, to remember what Don just said, listening to landlord Shelley, I appreciate her cooperation. And I think it's better than what we had. And like anything, we'll see how it plays out.
Mr.
Oh,
what? I'm sorry, I was going to say.
Councilor Johnson, you did raise I think a valid question, though. The language as constructed is unique to cultivation establishments. And I think the question you raised offline was an appropriate one about, are there establishments that may be manufacturing in nature, which also have the potential or possibility of emitting an odor? And should we have? And so I think that's an important, I don't know what the answer is. I think it's a valid question for the committee to discuss.
Okay, so let's further discuss it if you don't mind. Then, yeah, I brought it off. I went back and reread this. I think from our experience with our complaints from our residents, it typically is the cultivators. But some of the manufacturers do buy bulk to process in their manufacturing. Mm-hmm. So I was wondering, under the odor mitigation, if we want to at first try to encompass all of it, if we could just change a little bit of the wording, where instead of cultivation, it's any marijuana facility or the like. I mean, just to clean it up and make it a little bit tight. Because I actually had met and had a discussion with somebody that does manufacturing. He's got his own grow room, so that would also apply. He would apply here. But there are some folks that buy bulk, and actually they'll buy bulk hemp that has passed the threshold of the state restrictions from selling hemp CBD products. So that they'll buy a couple 100 pounds of hemp that emits odor, and but them themselves are not growing. So, and I think we have a couple of new licenses coming on that aren't growing, right? They're manufacturing. So maybe if we want to do this real time, to just allude to marijuana or any type of flower or any type of processed flower, but marijuana should do it.
Mr. Hall's had his hand up, patiently waiting for us, though.
Is that his real hand?
I'm pleased to have this discussion continue and kind of conclude. My question is more procedural than anything. So.
Yeah, so if Tom's got a procedural question, I agree with what Ken had to say. I think if we're going to make an error on this, we should err on the side of being more comprehensive rather than less. And I'm okay with the wording he's proposed as well, and suggest that perhaps we revise that now.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that also. And I'm wondering, because we start out under sub 7 saying all marijuana establishments. And then do we have, when you look at the, I'm not going to go back and look at definitions. Does that cover everything, Liam? When you say marijuana establishments, is that covering your processing and manufacturing and the whole 9 yards?
I believe that encapsulates all marijuana establishments. I
So-
think, oh, sorry.
It is a defined term.
I was gonna say, so you could just strike the word cultivation in 7A. Marijuana establishments shall be required.
I guess the question, I mean, I guess from my 2 cents, I think I'm certainly open to the idea that non-cultivation establishments may, again, depending on what they're manufacturing or what they're processing, may have a potential for odor.
Right.
I guess my question would be, does every establishment require, that level of air exchange rate and that need for that specific filtration?
Right.
And so I guess I would wonder if the committee would consider something to the effect of marijuana cultivation establishments or other establishments determined or likely to emit strong odor or determined to emit odor. Again, we can do a complaint process, shall be required. Again, some.
Yeah.
Ken, go ahead.
Yeah. Right. I didn't know if we wanted to do it on the fly, but we could reference just flower. Okay. Flower is the term used in the industry, and that means from cultivation to processing, tinctures to you name it. So maybe, and it's well recognized by anybody that's in the business. So if somebody's doing manufacturing and they're just using resin, they're not using flower, then they're automatically omitted from the newer restrictions. So maybe we could just fold in flower.
I might suggest you just look back up at definitions. Marijuana establishment is a defined term, and I think it does include things that you're not likely to be concerned with. So, Liam, it's on page 4 if you're interested. If you go the route Councillor Johnson suggests, and it makes a lot of sense, you probably ought to add a definition of flower.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So
Which
if you
probably
see
can't
here,
do on the fly, right?
Flower is in the plant, not the grain, right?
Right. FLOWER.
Thank you.
Yeah, this includes testing facilities,
Right.
Medical caregiver retail stores. I'm not sure that the odor is a concern in those establishments necessarily.
But do we know that for a fact? I don't know enough to
I've
tell
never
you.
been in one. I don't know.
Me either.
What was the question?
Do we know that for a fact, though? That even, in any of these others, you're never going to get the smell of marijuana beyond the boundary of the property.
So would it be helpful to get, and I'll wait for an answer to that question before I ask mine. Thanks. Sorry.
I don't think that we've had any concerns with any of our manufacturing operations. I think cultivation is the level of odor that is emitted from cultivation, I think is kind of I think it is on a different level.
So can we leave it as is with the knowledge that perhaps it may have to come back again, because what we're trying to do is get something at least established? that makes sense, and that at least is zeroing in on where we know for a fact there are issues. And that's my rhetorical question.
So I just want to ask a question to clarify. So does that mean that we would more than likely have people come back requesting that they not be required to do that? Otherwise, we would assume that it's a requirement.
Well, I think the ordinance would have to allow for an exception to be made.
Yeah.
And obviously, this language, if we covered all establishments and said this was the standard for odor mitigation systems, then I don't think that we would have that ability. I guess I am very supportive of, and not knowing, fully appreciating the span of operations and what the impact with regard to odor could be. I do like the idea of incorporating that all cultivation establishments, which we know is a known issue, will have this, or other establishments if determined to be, or something that we have the ability to require this standard for non-cultivation. Again, in the event there's an issue, in the event it's determined that there's a high degree of odor, or maybe there's some proximity issues. It's interesting. They talk about in the ordinance around odor mitigation, it's the property line or adjoining use of the same property. So there may be theoretically, there could be a manufacturing facility that really doesn't emit a tremendous amount of odor, but there's an adjoining property that can smell it because it's the next wall over. And maybe in that instance, we would say, you need to install even though you're just doing manufacturing, you need to install a system to this specification.
How expensive are these systems? How much are we talking about?
It depends on the size of the space. Obviously, because the air exchange rate is directly related to the volume of the cultivation space. Space yesterday where the ceiling height was probably 25 or 30 feet. They're not stacking their cultivations, but that does inevitably change the volume of the room and will require a larger system. So,
right.
3,000 to 5,000 is what I've heard for maybe the average medical grow. 500 square feet, something like that.
Okay. And is it like the air filtration systems that like we have in the clerk's office that we've been using? Is it similar to that? I mean, but where I'm going with this, is it like a plug-in system, or is it a fully engineered system, or what is it?
It can be both. A lot of them are these standalone canisters that range in height from 3 feet to 6 or 7 feet high. Those are the most common ones that we see.
Liam, I understand what you're suggesting, but essentially that would be kind of after the fact. We would know that you wouldn't know in the first instance that there was a problem, and I think it's better to start somewhere and add to it, frankly. Okay. I happen to like the direction Councillor Johnson is going in terms of manufacturing to the extent that they deal with the flower, the raw material, which we know to be odorous.
Nope. Madam Chair?
Yeah, hold on, I'm thinking. I can't do both at the same time. No, go ahead. Go ahead. I was just looking at the wording.
I agree with both Tom and Liam. I think the starting point, this is an area that, we're still putting our arms around. This is much better than what we had. And things may change. Believe me, I've on occasion gone in to see how the new stores are, just to set up, see how secure they are around kids. And the market is changing so fast. So there's things coming down the pike that we're not even aware of yet. So we probably ought to proceed with this as a good starting point and just be aware. And I'm sure we will be aware because our residents will let us know. So.
Yeah, and that's where I'm leaning at this point. Dawn, what's your thought?
Yeah, I'm fine with this, with the way the direction of the conversation is going. Yep.
So just the way it's worded now, let's put it out there like this, and then we can tweak it if need be, as circumstances. Because I know people are anxious for us to do something, to get something out there. So.
And I think the only thing I would just know is that this does not mean that non-cultivation establishments don't need to have an odor mitigation system. They still need to have a plan. They still need to have a system.
Right.
And they still have the same performance expectation. We're just going to this level of specificity for the known issue in town.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a real good point. Okay. Liam, you had, I'm sorry, I've gone back. I gotta find my glasses. I got my contacts in today, so I gotta look at my glasses for reading. And you had a couple of other things along with this odor mitigation.
Yeah, I guess.
Oh, and that's who do we hold responsible? Mr. Hall's got his hand up.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah,
trying to
just
remind me he wanted to talk about procedure.
Well, procedures in that we have existing license holders. So when does this requirement take effect, and through what measure do we insist compliance, or by when do we require compliance?
Oh, good point. So something like within 6 months of passage of the ordinance? I mean, not that I'm saying, but is that what you're talking about, that sort of wording?
Either that or sometime after renewal or before renewal. I don't know.
Yeah. Mr. Johnson?
Well, yeah, because I've asked this question on a couple ordinances. I've never known. My understanding is the law can never be retroactive. And I look at a ordinance as a law. So I would think this would be a natural outflow, unfortunately, of renewal. Okay. My opinion.
I mean, that's reasonable.
Yeah, if that's the expectation, we ought to state it as such.
Yeah.
Well, legally, kind of my point. I mean, we can't retroactive a change in the law, can we?
No, but literally
No.
considered, you could say, as of adoption, effective date of this ordinance, they're not in compliance, and there could be punitive measures. I don't think that's the intent. I think there needs to be some time frame for compliance, I presume.
And that's why I said within 6 months of the passage. I mean, do you want to do it within a certain amount of time? And I'm not saying right away, because I don't think that's fair. But I do think that you could put a reasonable amount of time. So what we've got is, do we want a reasonable amount of time, or do we want it when their license renewal is, I guess, is the question.
So they have to renew every year. So the greatest risk would be 1 year, right? If somebody,
And we're about 9 months out for the first renewal, right?
That's what's going to be my question.
Our first batch went through in September. So we're actually about 4 months out from our first batch.
Yeah, I'm fine with that next renewal. That would get everybody caught up, right? So, I mean, it's not that far off.
Where should we put it in here?
Is it really necessary? Again, just if you don't mind. I mean, they're going to come in for renewal. They need to comply with the ordinance. So at renewal, if we're going to go over renewal time, do you really need even put that in the procedures? The ordinance is the ordinance. I'm renewing my license. I have to meet the requirements of the ordinance.
I think it makes it more clear if you put it in there. That's my opinion, though. And then it's in there. So from now till whenever it's changed in the future, people know that every time is a renewal, they best have this in here.
Yeah, my only suggestion or observation is just I want to manage expectations all around. Expectations for the public, for the council, and for the license holder.
And continue that thought for me, Tom.
Well, I raised
your
the
concern.
issue,
what's your concern?
just that there may be different expectations among those three different groups.
Yeah. I know. I'm thinking the public's the one that's going to think, oh, good, they passed an ordinance, but yet it's not till renewal, and so they're still smelling the marijuana and whatnot.
Well, and I just want to make sure that we're being reasonable. We've got some folks that, with a September date, that have 4 months to comply, where others will have nearly 12 months to comply.
True.
Again, I don't know that that's necessarily problematic. I'm just trying to flag it to avoid some question in the future.
So where would we put this verbiage?
You know, since I brought this up, you'd think I'd have an answer for you.
That's okay.
Well, you could just put an effective date, right, Tom? I mean, we could have some discussion and we could say, you know, for new or renewing licenses as of the, you know, you could say marijuana cultivation establishments, you know, effective or applied for or something, just in that same language. I mean,
So you're saying, for example, you're saying effective September 1st, 2021, for example.
Yeah, you could say something like for any license holder on, you know, as of the effective date of this ordinance, any license holder, you know, must comply with these provisions within maybe say 60 days of their renewal. No, I guess that doesn't make sense.
No.
That could be 60 days after their renewal.
It could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So about by the renewal date, I mean, we all know where everybody's,
That's the.
so that would mean, like I said, by renewal date, they would have to be, they could be without one after they registered, but before they renewed.
And frankly, if that's a problem for some of these early ones that you'll see in the fall coming back around the second time, the council could grant them a separate kind of conditional license that if for whatever reason they couldn't comply by renewal date, you know, it was a compelling reason, the council could, if it wished, to give them a little extra time to comply for that the first time through.
Well,
I think
why don't we make it simple and say within 6 months, and then everyone's got to do it within then. Then you're not dealing with, well, if you can't, they know what the expectation is.
So it's within 6 months of the approval of the ordinance.
Yes.
With
Within 6
effective-
months of the passage of the ordinance.
Well, question,
Yep.
I may be wrong, but Liam, didn't we enhance the application for an applicant to state their mitigation plan, which would include whatever they're going to be using?
we haven't, we will. If
Okay.
this change goes into effect, we will, I think, amend our establishment license application to, because we also have to give them sort of the calculation for determining
Right.
room volume and, you know, all these other pieces. And so we will plan on doing that.
And how early before the renewal typically would we expect an application of renewal?
So the ordinance requires that people seeking renewal submit an application 45 days from when their license is due to expire.
Okay.
So, again, I certainly understand giving people some lead time, but, you know, I have some level of confidence. I know we have Ms. Pelletier still on the line, and she's raised her hand to contribute. I know that's not what we typically do, but my sense is that everyone, at least in the Snow Canning Road facility, which this is not unique to the facility, but that's clearly where our concerns are, have been, I think Shelley's done an excellent job keeping everyone apprised of these discussions, the plan. I think that whoever, I can't figure out, it was Councilor Johnson or Councilor Hamill, who, you know, I think that they're completely in support of these specifications. And so, you know, if we're talking about renewals, you know, the earliest person would have 4 months or so to get their systems upgraded to this standard. And I think for anyone new one coming in, once it's passed, this is the standard. You know, there's no,
Right.
And they need to just be aware of that. And so I guess, I think the other thing I will just say is that in terms of the enforcement piece, we don't have the staff time to go and reinspect 50 some odd license
Right.
holders or 40 to say, you know, this was passed 6 months ago. Are you compliant? So
No,
You'll deal with it when there's a complaint or when there's somebody registering for the first time, right? I mean, that's,
sure.
Yeah.
That's when we do some follow up. Yep.
That's, you know, again, that's why I don't even know if the verbiage is needed.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You're coming in for the application for renewal. Here's the rules. You're brand new. Here are the rules. And I'm sure we can communicate with the existing folks. I'm sure Shelley would help us, you know, send the message back about what the new standard is and heads up, or we could write a letter and send it out, or.
If you guys don't mind, I wouldn't mind hearing from Shelley if she's still sitting. Yeah, can we bring her in? Just
Shelley, if you unmute yourself, you should be able to speak.
So at the April meeting, it was on my understanding that this would become effective upon our renewal date, which I thought was very fair. Also, you made it clear that, and I don't know if, I mean, the way I understood it, I don't know if you want to word it in there, is that it was our responsibility to prove to you on the equipment that we were using was going to be an effective odor control. So, I mean, those are the two things that I came out of that April meeting understanding very clearly.
Okay.
That's the way I recall it too. And that's why I think, you know, on the application for renewal or brand new, it would list out the equipment being used for the mitigation. And the only effort really from staff would be to be able to determine what's listed does qualify.
Well, and hopefully if they're using the equipment that we asked them to, we should have a reduction in complaints. I would hope. That's the whole point of this.
Yeah.
But it's going to take a bit, you know, for the rollover on the mitigation. And that's where we have to make sure the neighbors are informed as to how it's going to work, and it's not going to happen overnight. So
that's exactly why I raised the question. It's just the expectations of all parties involved. It sounds as though the license holders at renewal will very likely be able to comply. That's not an issue. I think it's more the general public seeking immediate relief or change.
Well, I do recall the chair sending to, well, no, that was just for the public, the consultant report, but yeah, all right.
Well, I mean, I beg your pardon for raising this issue. I guess hearing all the discussion, I think Councillor Johnson's probably correct. It would be out of an abundance of caution and kind of belt and suspenders to add that language. Effectively, that's what it would be, is that we would, whatever the rules at the time of renewal are, is what they need to comply with.
Right.
And these will be part of it.
Right.
So probably best to leave well enough alone.
Thank you.
Yep.
First, do no harm.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm fine. I'm fine with that. Was there anything else that, Liam, that you wanted us? I know you wanted us to talk about who's responsible. I guess I'm reading your memo here again.
So again, I think that comes down to the issue of trying to determine when a facility has multiple cultivation operations, assigning kind of responsibility for ultimate compliance. So I kind of look at this as two parts. You know, the town's established odor mitigation specifications that we will go in and verify with our applicants to say, yes, this meets our standard and it should be adequate. However, in the event that it's not adequate and we're dealing with an operation where determining source is problematic, that the property owner or building owner or facility owner assumes some level of responsibility with that.
Right. Perfect.
Where would you put that?
It's right here, Jean Marie, in the both the marijuana establishment and property owner.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Sorry,
I missed that. Yep. Yep.
You know, when some of this was born out of, during our workshop, we had a cultivator, a license holder on who said, you know, when, as part of their lease, the building owner made it very clear that should they not be compliant with, you know, standards, that they reserve the right to remove them from their facility. And
Yep.
so,
Yeah.
I think it's sort of make sure everyone has some skin in the game, I guess.
Yep.
So, you know, sorry.
I'd like to make a motion then.
Go ahead. Please
I'd
do.
like to make a motion that we move this to the full council as is.
And I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? More discussion?
Tom?
Not Tom. Okay.
No, please. No, thank you.
All right.
I'm here to help, Ken.
Can I just ask just two more things that, again, I don't have proposals for the group, but I'd be interested in your thoughts or want to know the next steps. two other issues that have come up is around our approval and renewal process. And so some of the feedback we've heard from council is this, these rolling approvals.
Liam,
Yep.
Liam, I'm sorry. Can we finish doing our motion and whatever before we go off on?
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Go for it.
All right. Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Hamill,
Yay.
Ms. Katarina's a yes. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Gallagher. Sorry.
All right. So
I should have stopped you sooner. Sorry.
two other issues, which I'd be interested to know that the committee's thoughts are around the approval process for specific licenses. Is there any interest or appetite in considering a staff approval process for medical cultivation licenses? Again, these would be caregivers. When properly zoned, I think there's a strong suggestion, otherwise compliant with the ordinance, there's a strong suggestion that under state statute, they would have the ability to operate. And so I think that's my first question. That is the overwhelming majority of licenses in town. And just whether that really requires council consideration or not. So that's the first question. Second question I have around approvals and what the staff's role should be is in the instance of a renewal application with minor or no changes, is that something that the committee would have any interest in allowing to fall to staff as well? And again, I don't think I necessarily have an opinion. I just know that there has been feedback from the council on the amount of time spent doing abutters notices and going through public hearings and approvals for all of these various licenses. So I guess I just bring that up as a subject of discussion.
Who had their hand up first? I've got these. Go ahead. I'm going to go alphabetically. I'm going to go H first, then J.
I'll be brief. Yeah, I think we should, for the routine renewals, just not have to go through that whole long drawn out process. Just have that be pretty automatic and expedited process. For, original applications, those ought to come forward.
Mr. Johnson?
Okay, then I have a question. I support that. However, don't all food handlers come through the council at renewal time?
Yeah.
Okay. So if food handlers have to come through the council each time, because I'm all for making that an administration function also. I really am uneasy about keeping food handlers and pushing off marijuana.
So my only point is, I think we did all of these in one shock load originally. So every year this is going to be a big renewal. They're not scattered throughout the year, right? Didn't we have like a big launch? We had a big, we opened it up for everybody. So accordingly, then those will be a big shock load on the agenda every year.
But we get that with restaurant food handler licenses too. Occasionally you get a whole bunch of them. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, believe me, I would like to get the topic out of the council until we have to address concern or an issue. I just don't, if it's not even handed, I don't like the optics on that. Just be very honest with you.
So, but warrants are like this, right? Paul signs warrants all the time that are routine. We don't review these in public. So I don't know that this is equivalent to that, but it does seem that, there's so many other things competing for our attention in terms of agenda and airtime.
Right.
I don't know. To me, those food handler licenses or whatever are no big deal. Because, because Toadie's coming in saying, we've done this, this, and this, and they're all up to date. So I don't know why we can't. I have to agree with Mr. Johnson. If we're making others facilities like that doing it, why would we not with this particular type of licensing?
Is there a way around that? Is this something for rules and policy where we can lump in several items and push it off to administrative review?
Yeah, I'm looking. There is a food handling ordinance, and I suspect
Right.
in that ordinance it empowers the council as the approval authority.
Okay.
I think what Liam's asking is that we have a medical establishment ordinance in which you could cede some of your authority to staff for administrative approval. And it may well be we could do the same with food handlers, although there's certainly statutory guidance that needs to be. So we could do some research. I think there might be a reference to municipal officers being the approval authority, in which case it cannot be simply administrative, but we can do some research.
Yeah, I would like to see the research done because I know there's ongoing changes to marijuana policy up at the state level too. I'm not sure what's coming out of this session, so.
But I think you would get a general support for that. Yeah, because of time.
So why don't I go bring back and do, well, Tom and I can do some research and maybe we can bring back some further thoughts on this at a subsequent meeting, but I don't think that's really not the pressing issue. And again, if we're talking about renewals, we still have 4 months or so perhaps some time to revisit it. The other thing I just want to put on the radar, again, I don't have a proposal, but it's something that in talking with town council or legal counsel, I have received a few questions in the last few months from currently licensed applicants or license holders who are looking to make, I would characterize as administrative or de minimis changes to their application. So they are looking to expand into one more room in an adjacent suite. They're not changing their canopy size. They're not changing their LLC. They're not changing their purpose. But right now we don't have a mechanism for application amendments. And so in talking with Phil Saucier, he said, you know, he went and looked at a bunch of other municipal ordinances and couldn't find any mechanism for those, again, really de minimis changes. And so I guess I would like us to give some thought to incorporating something along those lines. So it doesn't require a new application or for it to come back to council for modification.
I would say go ahead and bring something back to council on that. That makes sense.
I just looked quickly at the food handler's license. There's a public hearing required. I think that's a key ingredient. That's not to say we can't layer in some public involvement, notice to abutters perhaps, or some such thing to accomplish the same, if you will. The one area I'd say we will not take on is special amusement. I say tongue in cheek.
No amusement intended or found.
Tracy has her hand up. Tracy.
Food handlers licenses, the only ones that go to town council are the new ones that come in. The renewals, as long as they have everything in place, I believe we just go ahead with them. But any new business that comes in goes to town council. Just a straight renewal, I don't believe goes to town council. We've had a few that have come in. I think that's why you guys have had so many on your agendas lately, because we've had a few new businesses come into town. But that's
so you're saying ongoing food handling licenses are just taken care of. We don't see them. It's just the new ones.
correct.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. I think that's something that can be taken up in the next meeting, perhaps. Just give it some more thought. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. And last but not least is solar. Oh, here's Jamie. I was going to say Jamie's been patiently waiting.
It's all right. I had my camera off so I could do a few other things while I was listening to what was going on.
Okay. You're out in a nice sunny porch.
I'm on my porch.
Nice.
Yeah. That was the other reason.
Nice.
I didn't want you to be distracted in the background.
All right. So what do we got here?
So I hope the cover memo that was put together kind of gave a good summary, but just to introduce it. So we are here to talk about the utility scale solar ordinance that you have in your packet. The draft ordinance has been developed because of legislation that passed in 2019 that made solar development in Maine more attractive and more feasible. Our zoning ordinance currently doesn't allow this type of development, and we know of at least 4 Scarborough landowners who are exploring solar development on their properties. So the Sustainability Committee and I began working on a draft ordinance language last spring, so it has been a fairly long process and derailed a bit because of COVID. Back on track now, though, we hope. And we have provided or given the Long Range Planning Committee opportunities to provide feedback throughout the process, and hope that we have captured and incorporated the feedback that they provided to us. There are a number of benefits of solar development, which are outlined in the memo, so I don't really want to spend too much time on that. The one thing I do want to note is that the draft that you have has not gone through any kind of legal review. The thought was that we would have this committee kind of provide some feedback before we took the step to go through legal review. So that is still going to be an important part of the ordinance development process. And that's kind of all I have right now. If happy to answer questions that you have. Rick Meinking, who's the chair of the Sustainability Committee that you heard from earlier, is here for questions as well.
Sorry, I was muted. You guys may or may not be aware, I'm the liaison to sustainability, so I've seen this more than you have. So I'd be interested in knowing your feedback. I guess we could start with that. I'll start by telling you I'm a big proponent of this, so that's why I want to hear from people who may have concerns, questions. I'm looking at Mr. Johnson in particular, but anyway.
No, I'll start.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm a strong proponent of solar and anything green too. This was, it was just new. So it's a lot to digest. I know it dovetails into a comp plan that's not been approved yet. That does give me a little pause. I'd like to, because I haven't seen the comp plan for a while. But a couple
you got a link to it today in your email.
Well, yeah, today, and I work 3 hours a week too. So anyway.
Well, get going on it. No.
Couple questions, if you may. They may sound kind of silly, but with these farms, I'm just going to refer to them as farms. Who owns them? Independents own them, and independents have the relationship with CMP and the distribution. Is that what the concept is?
It can take a few different forms oftentimes. So sometimes solar developers will lease private land, and there will be a lease agreement. So the arrays and the solar farms themselves will be owned by the developer and with a lease agreement on private property.
Okay, so I mean, the town, it doesn't become an owner of
no,
okay.
Not unless we want to develop some town property, which there.
Again, like I said, I definitely embrace it. I did like Allison's idea of a RF overlay to see right where they would be allowed, because we really, especially with growth, go out of our way to preserve RF zones. Even with the marijuana, we go out of our way to preserve RF zones. So an overlay would help me digest this about where actually these could be located. And then I'm going to wait for the comprehensive plan and do my homework and dive deep into the draft ordinance. But thank you for the work that you brought forward, and I'm sure this will be discussed. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Hamill.
Yeah, I thank the Sustainability Committee and Jamie and company and Jean Marie for this work. I think it's important for us to take a position on this as a town. I have to admit, though, I do have concerns. I know there's a tendency to look at solar as as a wonderful solution for all of our power needs, but I have lingering questions about profitability, the sustainability of solar. Whatever may come after that, and it will bound to be something. And then also, sort of there are environmental issues with depleting arable rural lands in terms of animal migration and also other things related to wildlife. So I always am worried that a little sometimes we're so excited about going green and going solar that are we really taking the time to think through those issues as well? So as we go through the evaluation of this, I hope that there would be some expertise that, you know, could shed some light on these questions. It kind of builds on what Ken said. Yes, and rather than yes, but as we look at this. Thanks.
Yeah. I mean, I know just enough to be dangerous with these solar farms. A friend of mine does a lot of work with them legislatively in Vermont. And I don't know if you've ever driven through New Hampshire and you know you've crossed into Vermont because all of a sudden you start seeing solar farms because they don't have any in New Hampshire, I guess. I don't know what the deal is there. But that being said, I know that in Vermont, for example, they make sure they're sited in such a way and built in such a way that you're not interfering with wildlife and whatever. And please take this right, Mr. Hamill. I'm just being a wise guy here, but we aren't going to run out of the sun anytime soon. So I'm not too concerned about that.
You're sure of that? Okay.
I just thought I'd pick on you about that. But anyway,
you heard it here. You heard it here first.
Yeah, I did.
So, I mean, the other thing is, there's a similar thing happening with solar, I mean, with wind farms, offshore wind farms. You know, our oldest son is a GIS guy, and they're doing all kinds of wind farms up and down the East Coast that are having a big impact on navigation and transportation and also fishing. So, you know, and there are environmental effects of those as well. Actually, pieces of the, you know, of those blades fall into the ocean. So anyway, I'm not trying to raise trouble with everything, but you know, there are.
Yes, you are. Yes, you
are. You know, unintended consequences.
Well, they're right to everything. I mean, come on, let's face it. But that being said, all right, Mr. Hall has had his hand up.
A previous speaker made mention of a specific project that is in development. I just wonder, is there any time sensitivity?
Yeah, Nick, are you listening? Nick Mazurowski. I know he was driving and had pulled over.
I do know that there is a lot of interest to see this move forward.
Yeah,
no, they've been waiting for a long time.
Nick just raised his hand. So could someone bring Liam? Are you there? Who's in charge of bringing people in?
Liam is. I'm not sure.
Because I don't have that capability.
Well, while we're waiting, I heard that too.
Hold on, Nick.
So are we saying that there's a project in flight counting on an ordinance change?
Yes, potentially. Yeah, they're working on something at the, well, I'll let Jamie speak to it. Okay. She's got more.
Yeah, so there are, I mentioned that there are 4 in development. One is on EcoMain's landfill, which I believe is moving forward under municipal use since Scarborough is an owner member community with EcoMain. The other is the former Kimberly-Clark landfill that I believe is the one that Nick is speaking of. I've also been communicating with a residential landowner who is very interested. He's actually viewing the meeting right now, who's very interested because he would like to keep his, be able to keep his farm working in Scarborough. There was some testimony or a memo from him included in the packet. And there's one other that is just slipping my mind at the moment. But yeah, there are 4 that are looking to happen in Scarborough.
Okay. Liam, can you let Nick in, please? Nick Mazurowski.
Hi, thanks very much.
Yeah.
I'm no longer driving, but I do have my 6-month-year-old. I mean, my 6-week-year-old in my arm. So apologize.
Oh my goodness!
Any noise again. Thank you.
Congratulations. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah. So, you know, as candidly as a developer, there's always time sensitivity. We have been working on this for several years now. And I know the town has spent a good deal of time doing their due diligence on this. we've worked with over 35 towns throughout the state of Maine. We shared, our data points with the town of Scarborough. And, just speaking candidly, for the most part, towns will move on these in, 3 to 6 months. We've had a few drag on. I know this one has obviously been impacted by COVID and the pandemic, which is totally understandable. But this is the last remaining piece for us to be able to reach the shovel ready stage and build our project. So, there is time sensitivity, and we would really appreciate the town passing it and allowing us to move forward.
Nick, what time frame are you looking at? Just out of curiosity.
We would love to, the sooner the better. We really are. We could break ground in a month's time.
Yeah.
And I think the way that this is set up, it's obviously a planning board process. So I would think,
Right.
The end of the summer would be great. The challenge with Maine, is that the build season is short.
Right.
So if we're not able to commence, by October, then we're really pushed into the next year.
Yeah.
So
Because the reason
earlier
I
the better.
asked, yeah, because of course our process is, this is just the first step in ordinance, and there's a process we go through, and then it's got to go through council. So
Right.
that's why I was curious. All right. Thank you, Nick.
Thanks.
I also just want to mention too that this ordinance, in developing this ordinance, we looked at a number of other municipal ordinances that have been well established, and this is in line and consistent with many other ordinances around the state.
Mm-hmm. Ken, you had your hand up, and
Yeah,
then Dawn.
just a follow-up point with the development, not the developer. I thought I heard you mention a farmer, a current farmer, existing farmer, was interested in doing this to serve his own farm. Is that correct? Is there anything in our ordinance that does not allow an individual to do solar?
It would not be to serve his own farm. It would be a utility scale, something of this size, converting a portion of his land into a solar farm to offset the expenses incurred on his by him farming his land.
Right. And that's not uncommon in other areas that you will see that. And again, I'm thinking of Vermont, some of those large dairy farms in Vermont, for example, have gone to some solar farming, and there's a win-win situation for the farmers as well as the because they're producing the solar, they've got lease money coming in, whatever. So, and if plus they're keeping their land in the family. They're not they aren't selling it off to developers.
Right.
So that's a plus. Dawn, I'm sorry, you've had your hand up.
Yeah, no problem. I was just going to suggest, as these issues and these projects are coming forward, it'd be very helpful for us just to see more detail. All we're really looking at so far is just the ordinance and this memo, however comprehensive it is. But it would be good to kind of see the maps, see where it's going to go, see how big the areas are that it's covering, that sort of thing. Just more details on the three that were mentioned, including the one Nick.
And Jamie, can you address, or maybe Rick can, because I've actually looked into it myself, okay? But you've got to be close to some sort of, remind me what the CMP, you got to have certain type of wiring nearby or within a certain amount of, close enough. So it's not like willy-nilly, everybody can just go put up solar farms just because of the capacity issue.
Yeah, so the first thing to look at is availability of three-phase power. That is how the electricity from the solar farm can get to the CMP substation. So, and I've talked to a lot of the solar developers about this as well, because a lot of the three-phase power in town is in our industrial zones, not necessarily in our rural residential zones. But it all often depends on the site conditions. So if there's not a lot of site work that needs to happen to prep the site, developers may be more willing to invest in their transmission lines to connect into the existing grid. And then this is becoming, solar farms are becoming more common. We know that CMP is doing upgrades on County Road to accommodate 2 solar farms that are going in Gorham, right near Scarborough. So upgrades are happening, and we're not quite sure how quickly CMP is making those upgrades. And there's been some coverage in the news about various challenges that developers are running into, but I feel like the landscape is changing pretty quickly because there are a lot of these projects in development. So I think that, Jean Marie, that answered your question.
Yeah. So, and the reason I asked it is just tagging off from what both Councilors Johnson and Hamel were talking about is, needing more information. I don't want to speak for either of you guys, so speak up, but I'd be interested in knowing, right now today, where is that 3 whatever wiring, where could things go? If we were to talk overlay, where would it make sense and why? What else do you guys want information on?
There's going to be, I think there's going to be a lot of information wanted by this council. Maybe other councils were different. That's why I'm a little taken back. I support it. I just get a little concerned when I hear people, expending energy, dollars, and time into something with just an assumption that it's going to fly through a council, and I just don't see that in this case. Although I do support it, and looking forward to drill down deep. We just spent 16 months on a GMO, and I can't see this as a couple month effort.
No, and I'm not saying that either. But what I'm asking you is, what sort of information do you need?
I'll need to digest and bring it forward. So if we can come up with a communication line, and maybe have a conduit so we can get some questions prepared and ready for our next session or whatever.
Okay, Dawn?
Building on that point that Ken made, which I think is a really good one, and the remarks you made, Jean Marie, I would say that, there's a lot of work that's obviously been done in the planning department so far. I'm sure we could see that stuff when it comes before the council. The other things that I'd mentioned previously, that, sort of the P&Ls or sort of the investment figures associated with the potential plans, and also just generally the mapping and some of the zoning and connectivity issues in terms of transmission that the Jean Marie mentioned. So those are just, first blush handful of things I would add to the list.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we're going to have access to the financials of these ventures, but certainly the land use components, we're not a party to them. I mean, this is a land use discussion. If we were a party, I think we could,
But isn't there a tax, tax aspect to it in terms of town revenues?
Well, there's the land, and then I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, something to do with, I want to say in spring of 2022, they're allowing towns to tax solar. Am I remembering something correctly here, Jamie?
Yeah, so I spoke with our assessing department about this, and so the land that the arrays sit on is taxed as commercial land, and then the starting in the spring of 2022, they can so taxing the equipment is currently exempt. Starting next year, it will be taxable, but the owner can request an exemption. And they would have to formally apply to the town for that. And then the state will reimburse the town for any lost revenue due to the exemption of the equipment.
So, and I'm putting on I own a solar array, okay? And I had just become familiar with this. So is that residential as well as the so-called utility scale? solar will be taxable unless there's an exemption, or you don't know that?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay,
But I think that just that brief conversation kind of highlights there are some probably issues associated with that. We talked about assessed values and, commercial, an increase in commercial assessments, which I would assume would be a good thing for the town.
yes.
More
yeah.
revenues from improvements on commercial properties. So,
And they aren't putting kids in the schools. Okay, and they're keeping their cows with the solar panels. But anyway.
And one of our Conservation Commission members made a good point that solar is temporary. So instead of developing house lots and roads on top of the land, when the solar array is decommissioned, it could go back to agricultural land.
Right.
That's a good
so
point.
they dismantle the things and take them away, huh? That's kind of what they do.
Mhm.
Yep. Yeah, there's minimal impact, to be honest with you. I mean, they look, but when you look at how they've got them set up and the way they're in the ground, it's minimal disruption.
I think the deer hunters might debate that with you.
The who?
The deer hunters.
Those Bambi killers? No. I'm being funny. I know I'm being taped and they'll hold it against me. Anyway. So it sounds like we need more, obviously we need more information. This is brand new to us, Jamie. Well, it's not to me, but it is to my fellow counselors. So you hear that, we need much more education and information about what the heck this is. Dawn.
But just to clarify, I don't think that means another round with us. I think it means when we get to the council, hopefully right. That's what I'd say. I mean, I don't want to second guess the chair, but that's what I would offer.
Well, me, I would pass. I'd be like, yeah, let's send this to council. But I'm in a whole different place than you two are. So, Ken.
Is that a better place? So you say? No, well, then I have a question. If this is going to be an ordinance, it's the ordinance that goes to the council.
Right.
Okay. So I think there is another round here, right? Or several rounds.
Yeah.
The council needs to be given a heads up.
Right.
And I'm sure there'll be some workshops, like guarantee that, right? Yeah, and then we keep it in the ordinance committee, and out of the ordinance committee comes the ordinance, right?
Right.
Or is this?
Yeah. It's the draft ordinance for acceptance in the council. Remember, you've got the council. We look at these drafts, we work on them, we send up to the council what we think makes sense, but it's just the three of us. The council could say, to heck with you, and they don't want it, or they want to rework it, or that's why you go through your first reading, your public, there's a whole process here. That's why, Nick, I know you guys would like this sooner rather than later, but it isn't going to happen overnight. It's just not how it works. So.
Okay. I'm good.
All right. So do we want specific information to come back to us for our next meeting in June?
Yeah, we should gather some information from the other counselors also. Yeah, and get it to somebody.
Yeah. So Jamie, I'm going to say, can someone get us, where's that 3-phase power located?
Yes.
At least that. I'm also going to suggest maybe if you've got any copies of what other similar communities are doing, what their ordinances look like, or information that they've gathered would be good.
Pictures, renderings.
Pictures. Yeah, we could do a field trip. You want to do a field trip?
Yeah, do a field trip.
I mean, we could. There's a solar farm in South Portland. I mean, there's whatever, so you can see what they look like.
To where the one that is almost shovel ready now in Scarborough.
Oh, you want to go and see where they're, wherever. I mean, we could do that. I'm fine with that. I'm down for that.
Or I could just go with the dog, either way, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Nick's got his hand up again, I think. Nick, is your hand up again?
Happy to host.
Cool.
Whoever and whenever. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think that makes sense, because I do think that unless people know what these look like and how they work, I mean, yeah, I don't blame you. You're like, what the heck are we approving here? You know? So, yeah. So let's plan a field trip before the next meeting in June.
Yep.
Okay, we'll do a field trip. Dawn, are you down on a field trip?
Sure.
Okay. And get that information. And then the next meeting in June is obviously the third Thursday, whatever that date is. I have my calendar right in front of me. That's the 17th of June.
Yep.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Anything else? Everyone's kind of looking at me like, everybody happy?
I'm going to eat whole phone.
Oh, must be nice. Tom, is there anything that your thoughts as the manager?
Yeah, in general or just on your agenda items?
On the agenda items,
Oh,
or even in
no.
general, or anything you're
No,
thinking?
no. I'll save general comments for a later day. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Motion to adjourn, I guess.
So moved.
Second.
Can we have the vote? Poor Tracy. I'll let you do the roll call. I've been doing it because I couldn't see you when they put the stuff up there. I can only see like 3 people at a time.
Council Johnson,
Yes.
Council Hamel,
Yes.
Council Katarina.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.